Hi, mate. How's it going?
Good, Alex. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Welcome to everybody joining us today. We are doing a third episode of our podcast series, webinars, if you're watching them online, on um, becoming a Scrum Master, what a Scrum Master is. We'll do all topics about being a Scrum Master. And today we're going to do about the kind of things you'd want to make sure you get across in an interview if you're interviewing for a Scrum Master. Previously, we've done why you might want to become a Scrum Master and the certifications around being a Scrum Master. And Sandeep has given us some great insights to that. If you've not already listened or watched those, they're on the website at www.agilecoach.com.au and available on YouTube and LinkedIn, on Apple Podcasts, and that's all on the site. Before we get started, Sandika, how's your week been?
It's been hectic, Alex, to be
That's
frank.
that's good. That's good for a Scrum Master. It means things are
Busy is
moving.
good. Yes,
Awesome.
busy is good.
Awesome. I've just been starting on a new gig. This is my third week in. Just
Yeah.
just getting the opportunity to just look at schedules and trying to get as much space. So today is we're recording this on a Wednesday. It's our Scrum end of Scrum day. Um,
Mm.
and I was thinking, I'm not too keen on Wednesdays being the end of Scrum. What's your favourite day for the last day of the Scrum?
It's an interesting one. Till I moved to Australia, we didn't actually care about what day we start, what day we end, except for maybe Friday because people are just getting ready for the weekend. So no brain power to do any planning or anything such. When I moved to Australia, started realizing that most of the public holidays are either on Mondays or Fridays. So to avoid that, most of the companies started using either Tuesday or Wednesday. I just went with the flow.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense. If you have planning sessions, we have about 8 maybe long weekends or maybe
Mm,
less depending on the state. So yeah, Tuesdays or Wednesdays. But with the remote working, Wednesdays become, like days where you come to the office, most of the companies, so it becomes a bit disruptive in a
mm,
different sense, So yeah, it really depends, but either Tuesday or Wednesday, I would pick,
yeah.
given all those reasons. But yeah, keeping the discipline of keeping everybody together while say some of your team is in the office, some of them are remote. That's the challenging part.
That is pretty tough. And that
Yeah.
goes throughout. I think we'll have a conversation one day about how to get dispersed teams working well together. I think that'd be a good
Yes.
topic. My own
Yes.
preference, the best time I done it was a Friday, but it was when we were all in the office and we kind of did it Friday morning, a little bit into the Friday afternoon, and then we all relaxed for the Friday afternoon and didn't expect ourselves to do any work, and so it kind of
Mm.
allowed for that. We're done. That's the week done. Let's have a good Friday afternoon. That's what we did. But it's Wednesday
That's
for
good
now.
actually if you can get it going.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean
yeah,
it's a different working environment now with people being at
yeah.
home. And the practicalities of public holidays is a big deal because there is Good Friday,
Mm,
so you will lose that at some point. Right.
mm,
Core topic for today is we are going to go into an interview situation almost where
mm,
you're going. I'll tell you about some of the interviews I've done first, and then we'll hear about what you think sets you apart as a Scrum Master when you go into an interview.
mm,
And it might be for
mm.
a delivery manager, or you might get titles like Agile Project Manager or Scrum Master or Delivery Manager. But if you're going to be
Iteration manager if you're in
yeah,
Australia.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, iteration
yeah.
manager, and that, we could throughout the next 20 minutes, we'll probably think of other ones that come up because they have started to sort of team agile team manager. The real thing is whenever, and I've interviewed a lot of people for these roles, you
Yeah.
what I'll say what doesn't set people aside, and then I'll hand over to you, Sandy, to say what kind of things you might want to put in. So when I'm listening, anybody who just wants to, I kind of want to hear that they understand the Scrum framework and
Mm.
possibly other frameworks, but what I hear too much is just that. I'll say, tell me.
Yes.
So as an interviewer, you might say, tell me about sprint planning, and he tell you what the book says. And so
Yes.
that's kind of doesn't set anyone aside. And so I'm always looking for
Yes.
something else. And I won't go into what I'm looking for. I'll ask you what, and then I might contribute a little bit at the end. So
Mm.
Sandika,
Actually, you're very
yeah,
true in that statement, Alex. So if you take a step back and remind ourselves what we've been discussing, and how we build up to an interview. So so we talked about certifications. It'll give you probably the component sort of skills or the knowledge. You know how planning is done separately to how estimation is done. And then in reality in practice. if you have a good mentor or a coach, you'll understand how to integrate them and develop those integration skills. Now, what actually makes you thrive at an interview is the next level where you understand what to be chosen at what level or what scenario.
Mm,
That's the part that comes with experience, exposure to different contexts, different situations or problems, and that's what you need to bring out in an interview. So so if you're a rookie and you've done only the 2-day course and you're still learning your ways of integrating these skills into practice, then you might not have that mastery that we would expect you to excel in an interview. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You just have to think like that.
mm.
You have to see. You have, just as you said. You are going into an interview. Obviously, you do the fundamentals. You'll have the technical aspect of it. You need to know the difference between two frameworks or whatever it is that they're asking from a pure technical sense, from a agile perspective. But it's more 80% probably is more on the practical side, how you would apply yourself given the context. And you'll do a bit of background around, there's a lot of, like if you go to LinkedIn, you'll be able to find out people who are working there. You might find a connection, so you might do some background work to understand at what maturity level, what are the challenges of this organization. If you don't have that, you ask that in the interview.
So
Okay,
yeah,
what are the challenges that you have in your team, probably before you get into the answer. Like, it's like, for example, if someone tells you, okay, can you explain how you carry out planning, I would obviously ask some questions to clarify the situation. I'll
mm,
ask, okay, whether you have sticky teams, or whether you have a setup where you have only one product owner, so the prioritization is through one person or through one channel. So those are important things, and they'll start thinking, oh, this guy knows something about planning because he's thinking to get the planning right is kind of proper.
and
You know what
is
I mean?
and that is that the kind of question you normally just so if you're in the interview, the kind of question you might expect would be, and it's a bit like when you go in for your exams, there are probably 5 or 6 things they could ask, but they're almost certainly to ask a question about situational responses,
Yes.
and it's going to be around what do you do when a retro gets out of control, or what do you do, and you can't get that from the book necessarily, but you could have you could have read enough to go, oh well, that's what a retro sets up like. So here are the weaknesses and the strengths of it.
Yes, yes, true. So I would actually, walking into an interview, I would actually assess the lay of the land, or in a sense, who's there
Hmm.
interviewing me. If you have an agile coach and a program manager whom you are going to report to, an agile coach, probably there to sort of understand your agile experience, or assess your agile experience, then the sort of questions that comes from the individuals will be different. So a
Hmm.
coach might be more around your agile prowess, like in terms of experience. The delivery manager, the program manager might be more on, is this guy going to fit in
Hmm.
to the challenging environment that we have? Is he going to bring the things that he's going to help us to deliver or survive? So
Yeah.
so you have to tune in, as in, okay, these guys. So if agile coaches are asking a question, then that might be more practicality, more purist as well. But if the delivery manager or the program manager is asking some questions, it might be more around, what am I bringing in to
Hmm.
manage the situation? It might not be very puristic to begin with, because it depends on the maturity of the organization. Um, does that make sense, Alex, when I
It
say
does,
that?
and it made me think
Yeah.
about you've got to. I mean, this is just interviews generally. I've got to do that. You've got to assess who you're talking to. You got to remember both of the people are listening to your answers though. So in that situation, I've been in a few of those situations myself now, and I think about you've got a really agile person on the board and someone who's probably a detractor, a traditional project
Mm,
manager, for instance. Your answers have got to be sincere to what you
yes.
actually believe, because if the program, because you might get from the project manager, we believe in fixing timelines and you have to work late if blah blah blah, the kind of traditional mindset around that. If you then
Yes.
answer the question to satisfy that person, you're losing the other person straight away. So
100%.
you
100%.
you've got to be honest to yourself in those things, because also if you're
Yes.
successful, you can end up working in there. So you got to live that that explanation out.
Exactly.
If
Exactly.
if you've got years of experience, Sandika, you kind of go, well, it was this time when I did this and this time I did this. But if you're new, do you think you can
Mm.
get enough from? your own experience maybe working in a team, because we talked about the idea that if you've not even worked in a team before, you might struggle to jump into leadership straight away. Do you think you get enough breadth to be able to answer those sort of questions?
It's really tough when you are new. It's really
Yeah.
tough because as we discussed previously, right? If you don't have that mastery, like if you don't have the ability to draw back from your experience and contextualize that, or pick and choose what you would do in a given situation,
Hmm.
and improve the maturity of the team in the process rather than just taking it backwards or making it traditional in a sense. It's tough, right?
Hmm.
So I don't believe they say, fake it till you make it. I
Yeah.
think
No.
that's very damaging if you are an agilist, if you are a scrum master,
Or a leader.
because you are damaging.
As
Yeah,
a, as
for a
a,
leader as
yeah,
well.
if you're a leader and you're
Yeah,
trying to fake anything, you
yeah.
you might
So
get past the one person who hired you, but the whole team's going to see it. It's almost impossible to get
yeah,
past the whole team.
yeah, and it damages your brand as well,
Yeah.
as a person. So you will be true to yourself to begin with, and you'll be true to the answers that you give. And Alex, you've been on the other side many times as an interviewer, and you would know, okay, this
Yeah.
guy has experience, this guy doesn't have experience. So you'll make that judgment, pretty early.
Yeah.
When like it's not based on the resume, it's based on the interactions and the sort of answers that you get, the replies that you get. So, so I would say be true to yourself as much as possible. If you don't know, you don't know. Draw back from your experience as much as possible, and try to relate a scenario that you have had in the past that might be similar to the question or the scenario
Yeah.
based question that's been asked. Um, yeah, just don't just don't try to fake it in the interview.
Yeah.
You'll be found wanting. Yeah.
And so I think what we talk about is general interviews, but also if you're doing a Scrum Master interview, you started, Sandika, talking about the framework. You've got to know that framework. You got to try and relate stuff to the framework and talk about, well, this is what we did, but eventually we fall back on the framework that guides us down that particular path. So if your interviewers weren't agile people, per se, and you will get this. I mean, if you go and in an interview with, let's say, a director of uh, a IT division, for instance, who's never actually worked in teams, they might not be so agile. They might ask you how you do planning, not really asking you about sprint planning, but just asking about planning. You start talking about the framework planning. You've got to really
Mm,
nest it and say this is part of a framework, because there's many ways to
mm.
plan.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, again, it's about reading the room as well.
Hmm.
It's not about customizing your answer so that you get a tick and then you can't survive in that or
Hmm.
thrive in that environment. It's about understanding the question in a way that you can actually customize the answer to a satisfactory level, that is true in reality if you're going to do it. You know,
Yeah.
so I think, yeah, you have that sort of kind of struggle in an interview to understand what is it that they're actually asking me to
Hmm.
do. Am I going to be enabled to do this or not? So you can clarify those things by asking, questions back from the interview panel
It is,
as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
It's a really good opportunity to also set your where you want to be. So you can say, well,
Yes.
if we are supported by leadership to do this, then we can do this. Um, yeah, I mean, this is more all interviews. I remember there's a particular mentor of mine that said, and he worked in hospitality. He hires on a smile and an attitude. That's it. And all of the skills and knowledge are
Yeah.
important, but he can teach those. Now they
Yeah.
might not be prepared to teach the framework again. They want to hire someone with a framework, but you've got to have an attitude going into those interviews. If you think that you're going to
Yes.
just be able to get through it with the Scrum framework, this is what
Yeah.
sets people aside for me. A lot of people with the Scrum framework, those people have an attitude, and there's something you said earlier, Sandika, that absolutely will stand someone out. I am there to improve things. This is
Yes.
how I can improve this team um, by
Yes.
applying good principles and disciplines around the framework that I bring.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. 100%. So you have to always apply that in your answers, and talk about the success stories, talk about the failures, talk about the learnings that you have had. Always try to relate to your experience with the answers that you give, and that gives more confidence to the panel that, okay, this guy is real.
yeah,
He's not just reading from the Scrum guide. He's real. He's seen the real world. and that's what matters. And you know, Alex, in Australia or around the world, there'll be very few companies who are like very true to the framework.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's framework is just a guideline. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think we've covered quite a lot of things, of sort of suggestions of things you've got to be able to get in there. I'm going to give you an example of something that you, not an example, real one, but be careful not to. It's a bit of a warning.
Mm,
If you've experienced Scrum, and Sandika, you couldn't be more right. There's no one does Scrum by the book. Nobody. They just don't. It's just almost impossible, right? To have the T-shaped
mm,
team and do it. So there's always been little adaptations. But
mm,
sometimes within organisations, and the last 3 or 4 I've been in, they're definitely like this. They do, let's say, and I'm going to make this one up, retros in a particular way where
mm.
they focus on what are your complaints. Let's say that's the one, and all the retro turns into is a big complaining session.
Yeah.
If you've only experienced that and that's not what the Scrum framework says, think about what your answer is going to be. Because if you actually just go on the culture of the team that you're in now, where
Mm.
it's a complaining session, and that's definitely not the way it should be, not the outcomes that you want. Be careful. Be careful to say, oh yeah, well that we don't do it like that. We do it like this because as an interviewer, you go, well, that's not really what we want from retros, is it? And you're pretty much gonna not pass the interview because of that. So don't take too much of the
Yeah.
experience if you don't think it's a good experience. That would be my warning.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think we'll talk about this in a future session. Like, what would be your first few weeks be like
Hmm.
as a new Scrum Master, and more, much of that is observing.
Yeah.
You know, how it is done before you answer why it is done like that, because
Yeah.
you would want to understand the heartbeat of the organization, what they do, and and then you'll start thinking and you'll start questioning why they do it like that and what are the systematic issues, and so on and so forth. but
Totally.
but in an interview, you're right, you just have to, yeah, just do that. Um but I must add, Scrum Master position is, much of it is challenging the status quo with either side of the boundary, with the team as well as with your leadership. And if you don't have the personality for that, and if you are in it for the wrong reason, not because you are passionate, but because the money is good, for example,
Is it?
and I'm just saying, it could be one of the reasons. So
Yeah.
if you are in it for the wrong reason, or maybe the brand of the company is good, or maybe you're trying to fake it till you make it, whatever the reason that is not, that appeals to you, that should be rightful. Um, then it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
Then it's going to be a struggle.
There, there is something you said earlier that would definitely. I mean, you often leave interviews. You have to go into an interview thinking, oh, I kind of want this job. You've got loads of applications out probably if you're seriously looking, and then sometimes you leave the interview thinking, I really want this job. And what
mm,
what would get me in that state would be being interviewed by someone who within that 30 minutes, if it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, I really respect them and I want to work under them. And if you can find those people, I mean, this
yes,
isn't this. They're the jobs that you really want, where you meet someone who you think I can learn from this person. So,
yes.
so certainly, if you're in the opposite situation where you come out of that interview and you think, those two people, they weren't like-minded to me. They're not going in the direction I want to go. Think about if you're even going to take that job because it's not going to take your career any further. If you work
Mm,
into a team where the people who are interviewing that first interview aren't going to help you grow, that's probably not the job for you unless it's just high pay and you want the gig to be able to move on to the next one. If that's your mindset. But growth in as a Scrum Master, growth is really important because it's not necessarily the first step of leadership, but you do want to grow and become a leader of a bigger group probably within the few years.
100%. 100%. And then in that instance, you are not necessarily thinking whether they know the framework or whether they are better agilists than you, but are they going to enable me?
Yeah,
Is this the manager or the leader that I would like to work under? Is he a guy who's ready to let things go, see the failures, and see, and set me up for success without micromanaging me?
yeah,
So those are the things that you would assess in an interview, and see whether it's the right place for you to work. Doesn't matter what the organization is to begin with. It matters with your manager.
100%.
If the person interviewing you is going to be your manager, that is a big deal. In my view, if I'm to take up depend make the decision whether to take up the job or not,
Yeah,
that's a deal breaker for me, 100%. And also, if you have an agile coach in the panel, then you
Yeah, that
don't
means
certainly master.
you can't get guaranteed to get a bit of support then. That's what agile coaches are great for.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, I've been an agile coach, so I would have liked it if more Scrum Masters spent more time just calling out and asking for help and getting that growth. It does happen, but it's great when you've got them. I've got, I've got,
Yes.
I've got one thing we'll finish on. I will finish in a second, and let's just throw a few questions that we're likely to experience in, and just let's just list them. You can list a few, and I can list a few. Um,
Mm.
but it's been really good chatting, Sandika. Really good. I think it's a good insight into how to get through the interview. Of everything we discussed, possibly one of the things is don't wait till you're desperate for a job to apply, because then you're always kind of left having to take the job if it's offered to you, as opposed to you can assess the other people and see if it's a growth opportunity. If you're desperate for the job, and you're only applying when you're unhappy, then
Mm.
you won't get much choice. So make sure you keep your eyes out when you're happy as well, and when you're not desperate. That's one thing I'd always give as advice to my juniors. All right. So to finish off, we should have prepared some of these. So because I'm now thinking some of the I've interviewed a lot of people. I've got some favourite questions I always throw in. I'll share those in a second. What are the questions that you're likely to face into in an interview that people would probably be worth preparing for?
Yeah, look, one of my favorite questions that I like asking is, what are your failures? What have you learned?
Hmm.
Right? What are your recent failures and what have you learned? I ask that because generally we prepare to tell our success story, tell everything good that we have done, but we rarely think of the learnings that we have had. We fail every day,
That's
every
true.
hour, every minute, and we don't take notice of it and things that we learn. It might be an interaction, it might be a ceremony that you did. You come out thinking, oh God, that didn't go well,
Yeah,
right? But the important thing is what you learn out of
yeah,
that. Do you let it go and you experience the same thing again and again? So that's one of the questions that I
yeah.
would ask, other than the usual guff that we ask.
So
Yeah. So
I would
that's one of my favorite.
I would ask that, but if I was to ask it, this is a warning to everybody. I wouldn't ask what did you learn. I would just ask when did you last fail, and it's for you as an interviewer to go, but I learned, and that allows you to demonstrate. And if you do that without me then prompting, you definitely get an extra tick in that on the page. Go, yeah, this
Yes.
person. So you're not always being prompted for what they're looking for. So
Yes.
it's about your mindset. What else, Andika?
Well, one of the most favorite questions would be, if you had to let go one of the ceremonies, what would it be?
Yeah, that's
Right.
you're taking all my questions. That's like my second question as well.
So,
Like,
like,
yeah,
I know
yeah,
it's one of the favorite questions
yeah,
in the industry, like, and we should all know the answer, but
yeah,
if you choose anything other than the retro, then you have a problem,
yeah. You
right?
got to, yeah. And even that one, you've got to justify it. You got to go, why are
Yes.
you not doing the retro? Because it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But it's an impossible question to answer because you've got to talk about the cost of dropping that as well. Again,
Yeah.
my question was always a bit different. I would always go, okay, we talked about the Scrum framework. Which part of
Yeah.
it don't you like? Which part of it do you think doesn't work? And it really gets you thinking. You have to be prepared to answer that. I think
Yes.
some of the set questions before we get on to the more difficult ones would tell me about your team. Um, tell me what your leadership style's like. Tell me how you work.
Mm.
What do you work on? Tell me how you deal with conflict in the team. That would always be one that's you've got to be ready
Mm.
for. These are kind of
Mm.
standard questions around just being a leader. Because if you're going to
Yes.
interview as a Scrum Master, they're actually interviewing someone who's going to lead and be responsible for the well-being and we don't like this word, but the productivity and the motivation of possibly anything between 5 and 15 people. You know,
Mm.
it's a big responsibility. So they want, if you're an interviewer, you really want to know that they're going to be responsible. So you're asking questions around leadership. So be prepared for typical leadership questions, as opposed to if you're coming from a BA or a developer role, you don't get those questions.
Yes. 100%. Yes.
Yeah,
I'll be prepared for that.
and be careful if you get a question, "How's your SQL skills?" Think about what they actually want you to do.
I've been asked that once,
Yeah.
and it was not a happy interview
It, well,
after
it's a
that.
fair,
Yeah.
be prepared for it though, because you've got to ask that
Yeah.
question back. Are you expecting? Because you might be going into a team of heavy SQL people who only
Yeah.
respect people with SQL skills.
Yeah.
So there's always a purpose. Well, there's normally a purpose to the questions. You're going to hope that.
Mm.
All right. Lovely, lovely chatting to you, Sandika. For everybody on the webinar, I'm going to just quickly put the website up. Go and visit the website, guys. We've got some videos from previous sessions, and I'm spending some time chatting with other people. Sandika might chat to some other people at some point and put that up about product ownership. We're on LinkedIn, YouTube. Um, where else? The website on agilecoach.com.au. And if you want to
Mm.
contact us through LinkedIn or through the emails on the site, we'll happily answer any questions on there as well. Any final words, Sandika?
Nah,
No?
keep it real, I would say.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Be honest. Be honest. Smile at interviews. Be happy. That's the
Always.
way. All right. Lovely speaking to you, mate. Have a good day.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Alex.
Thanks everyone for
Thank
joining.
you. Bye.
Cheers.